Hi, I'm Danielle Hornberger, Cecil County Executive, and you're listening to the Maryland Association of Counties Conduit Street Podcast, the ultimate source for news and notes on Maryland policy and politics.
Hello and welcome to the Conduit Street Podcast. Kevin Kinnally here with Michael Sanderson. And today we have a very special episode with a familiar voice. After 12 years of shaping public opinion in Maryland through the Goucher College Poll, the OG hashtag MD Politics vibe checker, Dr. Mileah Kromer has taken on a new challenge. She's now the inaugural director of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County's new Institute of Politics. Big loss for Goucher College. And as a UMBC alum myself, a huge win for UMBC. So today we'll dive into her new role, the future of public opinion polling in Maryland. We'll discuss some new polling numbers and trends and much, much more. Dr. Kromer, welcome back to the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hi, Kevin, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Well, we love having you on as a guest, and our listeners feel the same way. We always hear from folks. It's like you're one of the most engaging people just talking policy. And I love that phrase vibe checker. You embrace that. And I think that's terrific. So like maybe lay the groundwork for us a little bit. You built the brand with Goucher College, and a lot of folks have a great deal of respect for polling that came from Goucher. You invested heart and soul into that and became one of the most trusted sources on public opinion in Maryland. So give us some reflections on that and what led you to take on this new role at UMBC.
So thank you so much. Those are very kind. I really appreciate that. It makes me feel really good about sort of the work I did over 12 years, because that was really what I tried to accomplish. That when I started the job at Goucher 12 years ago, I wanted to build something that really did a good job of accurately gauging resident opinions, because frankly, the reason I got into doing political science to begin with is because I truly believe in the collective wisdom of the masses. I believe that people, not just at election times, but frequently should have a chance, everyday citizens, to voice their pleasure and displeasure about what government is doing. And so I worked really hard over my years at Goucher to build something that did that for Maryland. But all good things have to come to an end. And I had this opportunity presented itself at UMBC. And UMBC is a growing, large Research One university. And they have over 15,000 undergraduates and graduate students. And so just the capacity is much larger. And I would have an opportunity to work with more students, a larger population of students. And Kevin, you can speak to this. Obviously, you're an alum of UMBC. They have a lot of really great things going for them. They're the nation's number one producer of Black undergraduates who go on to complete PhDs in natural sciences and engineering. And frankly, like I want to be part of start bolstering first generation college students. That's probably my biggest passion, because I am one. And there's a big push at UMBC to have a lot of inclusion with first generation students, to work with those students, to help them get jobs in government and help them teach them about government. And then at the same time, produce something that helps shine a light on all the really great work that's going on across campus at UMBC, not just what I'm doing, but hopefully the work that I'm doing helps shines a light so people can pay more attention to everything that's going on. And I've learned a ton about it in the last couple of weeks. And I honestly, I can't wait to learn more about what my new university is doing.
That's fantastic. And it's got to be like drinking from a fire hose right now, I am sure, especially transitioning from a smaller college to a larger university. And I agree, UMBC has a lot of great things going on. I have the opportunity ever so often to go back and speak to classes. And every time I go, there's something new going on. There's some new project. There's some new, now there's a new institute, which is fantastic. So I agree. It's really, really awesome. And I think it's a good fit. The new Institute of Politics, it does sound like a very exciting venture. Can you tell us more about what you envision for this institute and how, you talked a little bit about this, how you plan to serve both the university and the broader community with this institute?
Right. And this is also like a big part of UMBC's mission as well. Like they're certainly interested in doing community-based learning. They're interested in like being a major player in Maryland, talking about like sort of important ways that academia can sort of contribute to the state at large. But so my vision for the Institute of Politics is I certainly want to continue to do the really high quality public opinion research that I've built my reputation on here in the state. But I also want to do things like build a really strong internship program through the through the Institute of Politics, so I can get more students to get jobs in state government. Because I sincerely believe that the best internship is the one with the Maryland General Assembly. I think it's the best training ground. I think that you can learn more in that 90-day legislative session than probably anywhere. And so I really look forward to trying to bolster those relationships and then perhaps growing it to other agencies in Annapolis. So if you're listening, if you're an agency person in Annapolis and you're looking for great interns or maybe ways to bring more interns into what the work you're doing, please contact me and we can set a meeting up. And I would love to help get more UMBC students in your agencies.
And I assume that also it goes to local government, Mileah, right? Local government, state government. And I also have to pitch the Mako has a great internship. It's paid. And I think, it's the 90-day session, I agree with you. It's the best way to get thrown into it and to learn. So state and local government, we love hearing that, Mileah, that you're trying to drive more people. We need it. We need young people engaged in government.
I think they're great jobs, and I think you learn a ton. And you can, I think being a public servant is a really high calling, and you're doing work every single day that helps citizens do their work every single day. So that's something I really, I feel really passionate about. Also with the IOP, we're hoping to do a lot of different public forums that are policy centered. I'm certainly going to be reaching out to you and Michael to see how we can bring some of the county level issues to campus and have some nice broad-based policy discussions. Although, as I always told you, I'm more of a vibe checker than a policy person, but I can certainly create a venue for your policy wonks to come and talk. That's for sure. And then we have and then I'm certainly going to work with some other campus stakeholders to develop sort of different programming for the IOP that brings in their strengths as well. And so we can, I'm hoping to be able to work collaboratively with all the other really good things that are already happening at UMBC and then stake out our own area of expertise where we can, so the IOP can be a place for Maryland politics and Baltimore County politics, as well as sort of some national politics, everything dealing with Maryland coming through our Institute of Politics.
I guess my quick react there is we just had a workshop at our last summer conference just a couple of weeks ago, and we had a whole panel talking about if you're a county that hosts a college campus, or in some cases like a military station or another facility like that, that's an opportunity to build a bigger footprint, to try and harness that innovation and harness the expertise that you happen to house because this facility or this campus or whatever is around. It feels to me like your vision for what the IOP at UMBC can be is sort of like a big footprint, but it's even bigger than just the physical campus. The idea of there's a political sphere in and around state government especially, and there's an opportunity to become a central player there and have spillover effects. You get people engaged, become a trusted resource, be the one who does the polls, but also is someone they go to look for expertise or their next hire and so forth. I love that as seeing an opportunity to jump into.
I think that if I could say one thing to academics is that please, you start to engage with the folks around you. That is one thing that was the best thing that I ever did when I started at Goucher College all those years ago, is that I made it a point to go out and meet with as many elected officials, as many policymakers and politicos and all of these folks to try to really better understand what they were interested in, the sort of core issues of the state. And I think that policymakers and individuals working in your space really can look to academia. There's great research going on right now that involves students, but also that involves PhDs and experts that I think some working together, I think could really, really benefit both the academic institution as well as policymakers and advocates. I would love to see more faculty and staff work more outside of academia and work with state and local government. But that's my soapbox issue.
Love it.
Yeah, it's fantastic, Mileah. And so we're super excited about it. I definitely I look forward to getting that call from you, as I'm sure Michael does well, and so many people in our orbit to come and talk policy at UMBC at the new IOP. It's a great opportunity. And I think it's going to engage folks from across the state. I do think, you're going to continue obviously doing your public opinion polling and other initiatives related to the 2024 general election and to the 2025 Maryland State legislative session, which we love to hear. So how do you continue the high standards that you set with Goucher in this new setting? I mean, I know it's got to be a lot of change and getting your network set up and everything you need there. How do you make sure that again, you continue those high standards at UMBC?
Well, I mean, so first things first, one of the very first things I went out and did is I identified somebody, an organization that would help us do the actual data collection of the poll. So that was like the first things first. Like you have to always hire a really reputable firm to actually collect your data. And I think the benefit now, this is one of my favorite things about working at UMBC, is that I get to work now with a larger team of individuals to help, craft our instruments for the UMBC poll, to help build, to maybe, hopefully, because I'll have a little bit more resources, to what I would call do some more second week stories. So I'm always really great at doing the sort of the top lines and the crosstabs, and political nerds dig into them and all that. But I think that we leave a lot on the table that I have personally left a lot on the table, a lot of more analysis that I could have been doing with in the second week of a data release, like digging deeper into attitudes, like trying to doing a better job explaining the why to the what. And I'm going to have a larger staff to be able to do this. And so I'm hoping to be able to write more op-eds, write more sort of even just quick white papers on individual issues that we're polling on, and give it a little bit more robustness to not just the top lines and the crosstabs, but let's see if we can dig a little bit deeper. Another thing I'm hoping to do, maybe not a this year thing, is that we're going to try to build out not only doing standard public opinion polling, but also doing some focus groups, again, to supplement our understanding. So it's not just the what people are thinking, but really figuring out why they're thinking it. And that is a future thing as I build. Again, I've been at the job for 2 weeks now. So there is a lot of infrastructure to be actually built and a lot of ideas that need to come to fruition. But I've been really happy with the level of support coming from the very top of the university down. And I think that we're going to be able to build something really big and really great here at UMBC.
Fantastic.
Wow, you got me sold.
Yeah, 100%.
But just back to your question though. So I fully intend on producing the same sort of like really transparent, high quality public opinion polls that I have made my name on for the last 12 years. So I'm still the same person, still the same skill set. And so I think that just trying to be, creative with the questions, trying to really tap into what's on Marylanders' minds and what policymakers want to know. I've always thought that was probably my best skill set, was being able to figure out exactly like the questions to ask that really got at the core of the political discussion in the state. And I hope to continue that work.
Well, I love hearing you talk about polling and this stuff in general. So if we can we talk a little bit about, a poll that came from another of the reputable outfits that does work in Maryland, the Gonzalez poll. They took a look at a number of issues, and I'm interested not so much in like just reciting the numbers, but you giving us maybe a little translation of what this feels like or what it seems like it might mean. I mean, maybe the first thing that Maryland political people look at is an approval rating for the sitting governor. I think the last time you were on with us, we still felt like, well, Governor Moore has only been in office for a certain window of time, and we're counting that in months. So maybe we don't have a real trend line to look at, but a 64% approval rating in the latest Gonzalez poll, that's got to feel like maybe a year and a half into the term, that feels like there's something there, right? Do you agree with that?
A 64% approval rating is a solid approval rating. It is good by any stretch of the imagination. Mm-hmm. So that's a great place for him to be, frankly. I think what I immediately went to when I looked at his numbers, it's like, okay, so let's look at the partisan breakup underneath. So obviously what we all know about our country today is we're really divided. There's this idea of negative partisanship, that people automatically sort of hate people who hold the other party's label. And so Wes Moore's approval rating, like no surprise, he's sitting at like around an 82% of job approval rating among Democrats. That's no surprise. That's honestly very similar. So Hogan, during his time, throughout most of his time in office, like among Republicans, he was around in the 80s. His approval rating for the former governor's approval rating among Republicans. So among Republicans, though, for Wes Moore, I will tell you one thing. The 36%, that seemed hot. That was like a whoa moment for me. It's like, so he has a 36% approval rating among Republicans. That is, for this polarized country and our current politics, that is, to me, is good, is a strong approval rating from the opposition party. As a comparison, Hogan typically was in the 50s or sometimes even above. Wes Moore, given the partisan breakup of the state, really doesn't need, quote unquote, and I say this need as in terms of like electorally. He doesn't need it to gain re-election or to win again. But it's, to me, honestly, as a Maryland resident and citizen, right? It is. I would rather see bipartisan support, or rather see some bipartisan support than just a single party liking the guy or liking the woman versus nobody else. So this, 36% to me is really strong. His unaffiliated number, those independent voters, he's right around 50%. Job approval rating among unaffiliated voters. As a comparison to Hogan, this was one of Hogan's always consistently strong categories. Those independents really liked Hogan. He was consistently a little bit higher. But this is a good place for Governor Wes Moore to be, sitting at a 64% approval rating. Nobody would say that's a bad approval rating.
Yeah. So I can't help but ask, I think one of my favorite questions to ask about to you as the vibe checker in chief is the poll question that's now become kind of ubiquitous. Like, is the country headed in the right direction, or are we on the wrong track? And that feels, to me, I think we've chatted about this before, but I think that feels to me like the ultimate, let's get past, is the incumbent office holder managing this certain issue well or not well? But it's just like, in general, how you feeling, up or down, thumbs up, thumbs down sort of thing. Do you think that question still has value in a time where, as you said, we have this sort of hyper partisanship or even negative partisanship? Does that question still have value beyond just, are you for or against the incumbent?
I think all these things are related. So I think that if you like the incumbent, if you think economic conditions are going in your favor, that you're more likely to say things are going in the right direction. I think all these things are related. They're not like individual attitudes. But that being said, it to me, I always find the comparison as somebody who is interested primarily in the states, the difference between like what it looks like when you ask folks like what they think about the direction of the country versus the direction of the state. And so what I have found over, I think, certainly over a decade of doing this, is that Marylanders like the direction of their state far more than Americans like the direction of the country. And so I find that comparison to be really useful to understand that. So people can maybe be frustrated with the country as a whole, but the things that our state and local elected officials can control are the things within our state's boundaries. And that, I think that comparison number is important to me. So it's a general vibe of like how things are going, but the comparison with a state and national, I think is to me a really important comparison. It's really useful with that number.
And it did tick upward, I guess, since earlier this year. I think we've got 50% of Marylanders thinking the country is pointed in the right direction. And that number was down in the low 40s early this calendar year. So, that sounds like a significant move, again, as a vibe check, right?
Yeah, among Democrats, too. I think that there's certainly an increased level of enthusiasm among Democrats since President Joe Biden decided not to run for re-election, and Kamala Harris, the vice president, is now their nominee. And there has been, I think, a really big uptick. Almost all national polls have shown that, particularly among Democrats, they're more excited about this election cycle. They're more engaged, and especially among those younger voters. And I think that probably translates a little bit into that right track, wrong direction number among Democrats, at least. Especially when we're talking about the country rather than the state. But for me, right. I guess I'm more interested in the state number than the national number.
Sure. So I'll apologize to Kevin. I'm gobbling up a few of these things, but I also couldn't help. We're we're at our heart, we're a county podcast, and a lot of the issues that are very direct for county governments is supposed to be our bailiwick. We are big players in infrastructure, and we advocate on behalf of local roads and bridges and so forth before the legislature all the time. One of the questions in this poll was asking, is it important to you for the state to invest in improving transportation infrastructure? And the numbers go bonkers. It's like, I mean, this has to be like the equivalent of pinball numbers for a pollster to see 95 out of 100 people respond with a yes. I mean, you might not get that for like, will the sun rise in the east? So, what do you make of a gigantic number on a big broad question like that, but still something that's relevant? We just got what the latest forecast is for the state's transportation plan, this big 6-year plan, and a lot of people are disappointed that projects aren't being funded in it. Any thoughts about the big picture of, are you for infrastructure? Oh yeah.
I think yes. I mean, I think what this poll is reflecting, you think about the issues that people care about the most. So those are the issues that are in front of them. And every single day, people pull out of their driveways or walk out of their apartments or whatever, and they commute to work. And so they are faced with transportation infrastructure every single day, every single pothole, every single bridge. I mean, my goodness, living here in the Baltimore region, people's commutes every single day because of the collapse of the Key Bridge. I mean, and not to mention all the really devastating economic problems that it's going to cause for the folks directly impacted by it. But even like everybody just in the general region has faced now more commute times. And so when you ask folks on a public opinion poll, like how much infrastructure matters, of course it matters a lot to them. Now, what's interesting, and I don't think this was done on this poll, but I've done this in the past, and so have other pollsters. When you ask, the division starts is when you ask them about sort of transportation infrastructure regarding public transportation, investments there versus roads and highways. And that's where you can see division among individuals, like and that again goes back to where they commute. Are you living in a densely populated area in which you would love better access to public transportation? I mean, then you would likely say that you'd like to see more investment there. But if you're taking roads and bridges and highways every day on your commute and your afterlife work, everything, yeah, well then you're most likely going to say that's more important to me. And it's it's about government. Government needs to balance, obviously, those competing interests and thinking about the broader economy.
Right. I love the touch point there, because I mean, if you ask people about the economy, oftentimes it depends on, how much the groceries cost today, or they're driving down the road and they look up at the gas prices. And so depending on the day, if the gas prices are down and maybe, grocery prices are down this week, people may say the economy is good. But on a day where they see they're driving down the road and all the gas prices are high, it may be a different story. So those touch points, I agree, super important. And with transportation, I mean, Michael mentioned the draft CTP. We know that the state, particularly the Transportation Trust Fund, faces sluggish economic growth, higher costs for materials and labor, a downward revision in revenue forecasts for critical funding sources, including like the gas tax, titling tax, transit fares, and vehicle registration. They face a lot of budget challenges, and that resulted in a $1.3 billion reduction in its 6-year capital program compared to the previous year's plan. And obviously that affects a lot of state and local projects. So it'll be interesting to see how this all shakes out. It is very good to hear that 95% of Marylanders believe that we need to do a better job investing in our infrastructure. So we'll see how that shakes out. Challenging fiscal times for the state generally on a lot of areas and for local governments. But certainly we got to find a path forward to invest in our infrastructure and make sure that our economy, I mean, look, the infrastructure feeds the economy, right? We need that for an economy. We need that to grow. We need that to have better education, to have better schools, to have more tax revenue, to do all those things. So infrastructure is certainly important, and we're going to have to figure out a path forward, especially because we see 95% of Marylanders want us to do that.
Right. And this is certainly something I would be interested on adding some additional questions on maybe some of my future polling on infrastructure and transportation issues. I'm also interested in asking, I think, about some housing issues. So affordable housing has become, I think, a really big topic. And so those sort of economic issues are sort of similar in the same vein as like this everyday sort of cost of living. It's not just the groceries, it's not just gas, it's how much like the wear and tear in your car because of transportation issues, that how much it costs you every single day versus time and money to take a bus to your place of employment. Like how much does it cost you to live? Those are, I think, big issues that I'm really interested in exploring a little bit more depth in the future.
Yeah, and these are all issues that are part and parcel to county government and what we do. So certainly love to hear that too, Mileah. And as the vibe checker, you are kind of plugged in every day with Marylanders. You're on all the social medias. You're feeling what people are feeling. Have you seen any kind of change in voter sentiment? Not from a particular poll, but are you seeing any shifts or changes? And how do you think that might impact the races that we're watching closely here in Maryland and nationwide?
Listen, I think it's impossible to talk about polling right now and not think about our really high-profile U.S. Senate race. And so for me, I think the big thing to look at is how the entrance or how Joe Biden stepping down and the entrance of Vice President Harris as the Democratic nominee perhaps will change turnout rates or reduce turnouts in certain area among certain demographics. Particularly among Democrats, like if those young Democrats now are really enthusiastic or more enthusiastic than they were, what does that mean for the Senate race? So I think if you're really looking at like sort of Hogan Alsobrooks, a number that folks should pay attention to is the percentage of Democrats who indicate that they're going to be voting for Hogan. That is a really, really important indicator. Because he's going to have to win anywhere between 25 to 30% of Democrats if he would to beat Angela Alsobrooks. And that's just because of the demographics of the state. And so that to me is like you taking a step back. That's why enthusiasm matters. And that because enthusiasm drives turnout, and whether he needs closer to 25 or whether he needs closer to 30, I think is really dependent on Democratic turnout. So that's what I would be looking for. That would be the number that I cared the most about if I was a pollster for a campaign.
Right. Which way the wind is blowing always has an effect. And that feels like the biggest variable for big picture right now. I agree. So I can't let you get away from us without trying to float one big picture question that's on my mind. And it's kind of polling, or at least polling adjacent. So I'm interested right now in the ascension of these sort of big models for forecasting, and they include generally polling data, but sometimes in a stew along with economic data or other stuff like that. And sometimes there's sort of a black box of what's in the model and that sort of thing. But some of these analysts like to come away with, and we take everything together, and now we say there's a 54% chance of the presidential race going this way rather than that way, or that sort of thing. Everybody likes one number. I'm guilty of that too. Who is it? I think the New York Times has the needle on election night, and that's fascinating. Like I love having a tab up with the needle as it moves back and forth, and something gets reported at Dixville Notch or whatever, and then the needle moves a little bit here and there. So I'm interested in your thoughts about like the big model makers and their role in more formal forecasting rather than just the pure polling. You have any thoughts about like that universe?
Well, I will say that in the past, anytime that we have done I've always been the work I always did at Goucher College was typically included in a lot of these like big models, right? So 538, Real Clear Politics included us in their polling averages, those types of things. So my view is this: is I personally think that you have if you have the power to ask people what they're thinking and what they plan to do, that is a really good indicator. And I think that sometimes the complexity of these models make it difficult for sort of everyday consumers to really understand what they're modeling and what those percentages mean. So oftentimes you'll see that that Harris has this is a made up number, but Harris has a 58% chance of winning. And so a lot of times people will look at that number and say, oh, she's going to get 58% of the vote. So I think that it's sometimes the complexity of these models, although they're sophisticated, and listen, I will be the first one to tell you, more sophisticated than what I can do. So I'm not a person building one of these these statistical models, and I don't pretend like I have that skill set. But because of that, I can say that it's oftentimes, I think, confusing for people. And I think, to me, the best way to sort of look at these election cycles is just continue to sort of, look at the high quality polls that are being produced and look at them as individual snapshots in time and understand that elections are fluid. I look back to the Alston-Brooks-Trone race, and I was in the field with that race. I think a solid 6 weeks before the election day, and we had Trone up. And anybody who was paying any attention to the actual the politics of the state would have said, yes, 6 weeks out from the election, Trone was up. He was, he had spent a fortune on ads. He was all over the place. And also Brooks' campaign really heated up in those waning weeks. And she was able to, and I would say credit where it's due to her campaign, was able to close that gap and then pull ahead. And I think she did that mostly in the waning weeks when she's really wisely spent a large chunk of her campaign cash when people were paying the most attention. So I guess that is what I would say is that I think that these models are fine. I think it's fun for folks who really love the horse race aspect of politics, picking winners or losers, and people who really want to see the future. But I think it's really important to pay attention to the here and now, where the campaign is at right in this moment. I think polls do a great job of that sort of snapshot. That's what I would do. I'm more of a poll purist than I am of a large election forecasting person. But I'm also like somebody who's really focused on the states too. So I'm less interested in predicting national elections and more interested in what's going on in the Maryland General Assembly and the policy surrounding it, I suppose.
Got it. Well, I guess you're also a stakeholder in a component of the model making where some of these outfits, I think they go through polling and they decide whom to include maybe and whom to weight less or to exclude. And I guess that's based on transparency and methodology and so forth. I'm sure at Goucher, you were on the right side of those decisions. So you think they're right to do that, to basically say, hey, this is a Johnny-come-lately outfit. I'm not going to take their numbers as seriously as someone who's as established as the old Goucher poll or what will be coming from UMBC.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said this about models: you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And so, this is true about a lot of things. But so the models are only good at, as the data inputs. And their own and the decisions made of the forecasters themselves, the people actually building this model of how much to weight things. But yeah, you have to be really careful. You shouldn't, not every poll is created equal. There are some polls that have maybe some questionable methodology, or we're not transparent about their methodology, and I mean everything from when the poll is conducted, who paid for it, how many people were interviewed, what's the margin of error, and even smaller, more granular things did they release the survey instrument so you could see the questions as worded in the order in which the questions were administered. All of these things to me are really, really important, and I don't think that would be something I would give big pause to, is a model that is including perhaps things that they shouldn't be including, that maybe have some questionable track record, or are just questionable in terms of if you can't tell me those the basic transparency things about the poll, for me, I'm you probably shouldn't include it. Yeah, but I'm a stickler though. If you look at every single release I have done, I have made it very easy for people to read through it. Even just the most casual observers, they can tell you from reading any of my press releases, who paid for it, when it was conducted, how many people were interviewed, how they were interviewed, and what the sample demographics look like, and the questions is worded in the order in which they were administered. All that is right out front for me. It's very, very important. Yes, absolutely.
Right? I don't want to dig in unless I know that it's good data. So super important. And I think that's a really good dialogue, Michael, and a good question. One more question I have, Mileah, before we let you get out of here. I hear some people say, well, when we look at the national politics and we look at national polling, particularly for the presidential race, that maybe we should only include the swing states, right? Maybe we should only include polling from Georgia, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, states like that, and maybe exclude data from other states where it's not so much of a toss-up, like Maryland, right? Did you have any thoughts on that in terms of, we know that there are certain states that will decide this election based on the Electoral College. Is it fair to say that maybe we should focus polling on only those swing states to kind of give people a true indication of where things are and how the election might swing?
So listen, you win through the Electoral College, you don't win through the popular vote. And so a lot of, I think, resources are certainly expended to do these large national polls. that will show, obviously like nationally how well a candidate is doing. Obviously, the swing states, the battleground states are the most important because they will ultimately decide who is going to win. Maryland is important because of the Senate, right? So we're going to get a little bit more national attention just because there's a chance that Maryland could play the role in the balance of power in the Senate. Right. But I think most media organizations, like the big players who are sponsoring these polls, are especially in the next the waning weeks are probably going to be expending most of their resources in the battleground states, which again, I will go back to my pitch is like, it doesn't make state politics less important. And one of the things I think I'm really proud of is that I've taken the time over the last, decade to try to figure out what Marylanders think about Maryland issues, because I know because national organizations are certainly not interested in our state. At least in terms of presidential election years. And they're not interested in the public policy issues of our state. But we are, and I am. And so I think that's, yes, I would like to see, I always love when Maryland makes national news because I'm like, oh, pay attention to us. Look how interesting we are. But that really doesn't happen all that often. This is actually the Hogan Alsobrooks race, is nationally interesting. And we don't get a lot of that. A lot of nationally interesting, those type of races.
Yeah, the amount of money pouring in from outside of the state, trying to influence that race. I mean, if you watch television and you watch your local news in the evening, you'll see ads coming from PACs that are not in Maryland. So I think that's only going to increase, and we're going to see a ton of that as that money continues to pour in. And Mileah, of course, we can't let you get out of here without talking a little bit Baltimore Orioles. As we sit here on September 5th, things are still in good shape, decimated pitching. Tough night last night, getting waxed by the White Sox of all teams, the worst team in a long time. But also the Yankees lost, so it's not all bad. Birds still sit atop the division. Mileah, how are you feeling as the number one Orioles fan?
I feel good. Listen, you're giving me way too much credit as the number one Orioles fan. I think I told you this before.
I don't know.
I've been to this. I think that I went last night. I actually saw the series of unfortunate events that happened last night. But I've been to almost 30 games this season, and I certainly plan on buying playoff tickets. That's what I plan on purchasing. Yes. That's gonna be my big, what I would call middle class luxury, is me buying the playoff tickets. I'm obviously really excited. I really started being a fan about last season, and I went all in. And I'm a huge Anthony Santander fan, so I'm obviously very excited to see every single Tony Tater, and I loved it. But just, I don't know. I wish I could. I know that you asked me this, and I really think you should have Mark Korman on to talk about Orioles baseball, because he is a true super fan who knows all the stats and history. And I would say that I'm a cheerleader more than anything.
We will get Mark Korman and Sandy Rosenberg. I think those are the two Orioles aficionados on to talk about the Orioles and Metro and whatever else. I mean, that sounds great. And you, Mileah, because I do think I've seen you at multiple Oriole games. I do think that you are a super fan. Yeah, I know you. I know. I think you're becoming the number one fan.
No, I'm a super fan. Don't get me wrong. But if you want to actually talk baseball with somebody with more than an inch deep of knowledge, you're going to want to go. I think to Mark Korman would be who I would suggest.
Yeah, we need the long suffering fans who have actually been through some tough times, who are now totally breathing in the good times. Right? Yes.
Listen, as a huge Caps fan, I can relate up until 2018 or so. So yes, the Oriole and an Orioles fan, we've all struggled a long time. And the Ravens, of course, the Ravens kick off tonight too. So big sports times in Baltimore and in Maryland right now. But Mileah, thank you so much for joining us. We always really appreciate your insight. Super excited for you and your new role at UMBC, and really looking forward to what's to come there, because I think it's going to be great.
Well, thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure. And hopefully we'll have a really great UMBC Institute of Politics booth at Mako next summer.
I love that. We'd love to have you, of course. And again, we'll talk soon. Everything's ramping up now as we get to November. Mileah, I know you're going to be super busy, but hopefully we can have you on before the election or just after to recap everything. But again, always good talking to you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. And of course, we will put all of the links to where to find Mileah and her socials and UMBC and the new role there on the blog and on our show notes. One more thing before we go. If you're planning to attend the Mako Winter Conference at the Hyatt Regency Chesapeake Bay Hotel in Cambridge, Maryland, this December 11th through 13th, we've got some important updates for you. First off, we know the Hyatt fills up fast, and staying in the hotel really enhances that conference experience. So we're changing things up this year to make sure everyone has a fair shot at securing their room. Hotel reservations will now be part of the registration process, which means you must be registered as an attendee or an exhibitor to book a room. This helps prevent overbooking and those last-minute cancellations that can throw a wrench in our plans. Don't worry, though. We'll be announcing the registration details, including exhibit and hotel room rates, very soon. This will give everyone enough time to get those approvals lined up before registration opens. Speaking of which, registration will open in phases. First for county elected officials, then for county staff and Mako corporate partners, followed by sponsors and exhibitors, and then for everyone else. We've also secured a secondary hotel just across the street, and we'll have a shuttle running between the two. So you'll be taken care of no matter where you stay. To stay in the loop, make sure to keep an eye on our website and blog, and sign up for conference updates at mdcounties.org/subscribe. Stay tuned. If you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead and subscribe. That way, all of your episodes will be sent directly to the device of your choice. You can also follow along on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and then, of course, you should always be reading the Conduit Street blog. But for Michael Sanderson and our esteemed producer, Chantel Malcolm-Lim, this is Kevin Kinnally signing off, and we will talk to you soon.